CBS, America's #1 independent television network, presents the following sports exclusive.
Kick by Hartley. It is good! It's good! Hell is frozen over. The Saints are on their way to the Super Bowl.
Short drop, quick throw, left side. Intercepted! He runs on! Touchdown! Al Harris, game-winning touchdown!
Draw to Biner. Ernest Biner. Fumble the ball, and Denver has recovered. Oh, my!
Welcome to Basically a Football Show.
Welcome to Basically a Football Show, Week 11 in the NCAA football, Week 10 in the National, what's supposed to be football league. And as you can tell, we're not thrilled with the NFL product this season.
No.
Where on the other hand, college, after these playoff rankings come out, things just heat up. They get turned up to another notch. Everyone gets put into a frying pan. And it was no more evident than it was this weekend with some of the turmoil happening in the top 25.
A lot of wrenches getting tossed into a lot of gears over the weekend in college football.
So we'll start with the #1 team in the country still. The top four in the playoff probably going to stay where they are, as all four teams won in relatively easy, convincing fashion. Clemson beat Syracuse 37-27. 10 points, not huge, but Clemson did what it needed to do. Didn't really have any trouble with the orange. Alabama knocked off a ranked team, Mississippi State, number 17 in the country, 31-6. Maybe that puts Alabama over Clemson, but you got to think that the undefeated team, they're not going to displace that if you're the committee right now. Number 3, your Ohio State Buckeyes stay with a perfect record, 10-0, 6-0 in conference play with a 28-3 win over Illinois. And Notre Dame knocks off Wake Forest 28-7. That's your top four. Everything staying pretty much where they are in the potential playoff teams.
Can we call Syracuse the Indiana of the ACC? I think that they play teams tough, but they don't win. Like they played Clemson tough at home, they didn't win. I think they played somebody else tough this year at home, and they didn't win. And
let's see, they lost to Louisville by 24.
Well, I'm not saying they're good. I'm just saying they're the Indiana of the ACC.
They lost to Florida State by 24.
All right, well, maybe I'm wrong about that.
They lost to Pitt by 3.
Okay.
Lost to Virginia by 6.
All right, maybe not. But
they lost to LSU only by 10 points.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. They played a couple of good teams pretty tough. But I'm going to quit penalizing teams for not winning big because there's just been too many teams this year, I say even in the top 10, that are winning games, and you're going, well, we're going to maybe not be that impressed because they didn't win by that much, but I'm seeing it happen with everybody. So I'm going to quit penalizing like my Ohio State Buckeyes for one, that, they're not blowing teams out, so they're not as impressive as, say, in Alabama or whatever. Everybody's doing it. So I think we've got to just start looking at the win totals and forget about the rest.
The only other thing I want to mention about Clemson, their quarterback Deshaun Watson, maybe this is a game that throws him into the Heisman conversation a little bit more seriously. 360 yards, 2 touchdowns in the air, 105 yards, and 1 touchdown on the ground. He's been pretty solid for the Tigers all season.
Yeah. I think he's got to be in the conversation, doesn't he? I mean, has he had a game where you would say, okay, I mean, I'm sure he has, but... Well,
you look at some of the games they've won. They have the Notre Dame win on their schedule. They have the Florida State win. He puts up numbers like this. He's up there, and the fact is, going into last week, the runaway favorite was Leonard Fournette. And 2 consecutive weeks where he's not been good at all. Uh-huh. And now you get Deshaun Watson creeps up for number 2 Alabama. Derrick Henry certainly has to be in the conversation right now, the running back. 22 carries, 204 with 2 TDs. Another solid day for him. Even Ezekiel Elliott, maybe 27 carries, 181 yards, 2 TDs.
Yeah, but I don't know that Zeke's put together a consistent enough resume. He's been good all season, don't get me wrong, but there have been a couple games. I mean, I want to say the opening game against Virginia Tech, they did okay. I don't know that I'd put him at the very top of the list, but he's probably going to be in consideration. But I'd say more in the second tier level of Heisman consideration.
Yeah, and on the whole, there's nobody that's really running away with this Heisman Trophy race this season. It's going to be there's going to be a lot of choices. Maybe Derrick Henry is at the front right now because he's been the most consistent.
Who is the kid, the wide receiver for Baylor, was getting a lot of run too as one of the contenders, but.
Yeah, but his productions dipped as soon as the starting quarterback went out.
Right.
So, and of course, we'll talk about Baylor in just a minute. And things aren't looking so hot if you're a Baylor Bear. But let's go out of the top 4, move into the contenders for the playoff spots. Number 5, your undefeated still Iowa Hawkeyes, 40-35 over Minnesota. It was a tight one, but the Hawkeyes still winning the games.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I'm not going to penalize them for only beating Minnesota by 5 because Minnesota's another team that's played some teams tough this year. The Hawkeyes, I got to think, are they legit at this point, or is this just the benefit of an easy schedule?
I think it's the benefit of an easy schedule.
We'll find out in a couple weeks.
Iowa has played exactly one ranked team. That was number 20 Northwestern. They beat them by 30. But there's something I want to talk to you a little bit later once we get through all the rankings about some possible Big Ten cronyism happening in these playoff rankings.
Wouldn't be a bit surprised.
But, I mean, I'm looking at their schedule. This is who Iowa's played this year. Illinois State, Iowa State, Pitt, North Texas, Wisconsin, Illinois, Northwestern, Maryland, Indiana, Minnesota. They finish up with Purdue and Nebraska.
Not exactly a murderer's row, is it?
No.
I don't know, though. The North Texas Mean Green, I mean, come on. That's a tough win.
Yeah. So they beat Pitt by 3. They beat Wisconsin in that 10-6 game.
Oh, if you're asking me if I think Iowa should be ranked number 5, I don't. I'm glad to see them be successful, and it's fun. And, we kind of picked them last year as a team to keep an eye on, and they showed up a year late. But no, do I think they're a number 5 team in the country? Absolutely not.
No, you run down the list of last week's top 10. They're not beating any of the top 4.
No.
I don't even think Ohio State. Baylor, no. Stanford, no. Oklahoma State, I'd say no at this point. LSU, definitely no. Utah, no. Florida,
I don't know. I think Iowa plays the right style of football to give LSU a game.
Maybe.
But yeah, I don't think they're number 5. No, I have to agree with you there.
Number 6, Baylor. They hosted number 12, Oklahoma, as the Big 12 finally gets into the meat of its schedule. Last week we had Oklahoma State knocking off TCU, and this week another Oklahoma school making its surge, knocking off a highly ranked, probably overrated Texas school. Oklahoma knocks off Baylor 44-34. Samaje Perine, 28 carries, 166 yards, 2 TDs. 3 TDs by the quarterback of Oklahoma, Baker Mayfield, 270 in the air. A big win for Oklahoma, and Baylor, they finally played a halfway legitimate college football team and lost, as they probably should.
Yeah, this is a team that I think the whole conference, and I know there's a lot of love for Oklahoma State out there after the thumping they put on TCU. I'm still not buying into any of the teams in this conference, even Oklahoma. No. I'm just not. They're just what you're seeing, and we saw it again this week. Baylor played a team that can actually play a little bit of defense, and look what happened. And not even good defense, just enough defense to keep them from scoring 60 points, and there you go.
Well, and the thing that concerns me is you have now Oklahoma State and Oklahoma starting to vault up the rankings. And because all these Big 12 teams are finally starting to play each other, Big 12 was smart, backloaded their schedule until after the playoff rankings came out. But the problem is, do any of those teams deserve to be ranked where they are? Because none of those teams have played anybody.
Right.
Baylor, Oklahoma was their first ranked team they played all year, and they lost. TCU, I believe Oklahoma State was the first ranked team they played all year, and they lost. So what do you want to take from all these? Like, that they can beat each other in their own conference? Like, they didn't play anybody out of conference.
See, you talked about Big Ten cronyism taking place in the committee, and I think that's certainly a possibility. Another thing I think the committee likes is they like new, shiny things. Mm-hmm. Like Oklahoma State goes out and they pound TCU, and it's like all of a sudden, hey, look, Oklahoma State got to move them up. And now we got Oklahoma. Hey, look, Oklahoma's new and shiny. And I think we're running into a little bit of that too. But this conference, the way it's shaping up right now, it looks like there's going to be a team from this conference that most likely will make the playoff. And I don't know that I would agree with that at this point.
I think the problem lies with the other teams. We'll talk about the Pac-12. Some of these teams are just cannibalizing themselves. And here's the other thing, though. If the rankings stay as they are, with the top 4 being some order of Clemson, Alabama, Ohio State, Notre Dame. The only team that could possibly get knocked out of there is Notre Dame. If Oklahoma State finishes undefeated, Oklahoma knocks off Oklahoma State later in the year. I think Notre Dame's the only team that's susceptible. But if Notre Dame wins the rest of their games, how are they any less legitimate than Oklahoma State or Oklahoma? And you got to think to some degree that there's the committee says that they want just whoever's the top 4 teams in the country. With these games being on New Year's Eve, the playoff games this year, do you think that there's some sort of ratings game that gets played into that, and they know people will tune in for Notre Dame as opposed to Oklahoma State?
Well, we thought that might be a possibility last year, and we saw what happened. We had Baylor and TCU, teams that don't – I mean, let's be honest about it. They do not have the national pull that Ohio State does.
No.
And you've got Notre Dame.
Are you more likely to watch Ohio State, Alabama, or Alabama, Baylor?
Well, obviously, my answer to that question, but right. Yeah, Ohio State has the national draw. Notre Dame probably, if there's a team with a bigger national draw than Ohio State, it's probably Notre Dame. It's just one of those things where you don't want it to play a role, but it's probably going to. And we talked about this last week. I'll bring it up again. Last year, we didn't have Notre Dame thrown into the mix in the playoff here to kind of screw things up. Now we're looking at it. If Notre Dame runs the table, we know at least one power conference is going to be left out, probably 2. So it's going to be – I just don't see how – if Notre Dame runs the table, I don't know how you take them out. If you've had them in this whole time, what did they do to deserve not to be there? Especially you're going to knock out Notre Dame for Oklahoma State out of the Big 12. I can't justify that.
No. And I think ultimately my problem right now with the Big 12 is – or with the Big 12 in the rankings is – the committee thinks that the Big 12 is proving itself by beating itself.
Yeah.
None of those Big 12 teams beat anybody with any sort of standing out of conference. Like the only team with the biggest out of conference win for any of those 4 teams was Oklahoma beating Tennessee back in the second week of the season. And
that doesn't look like it's that big of a deal at this point. No, I don't know. I just don't know how you can reward these guys. I mean, yes, they backloaded their schedule, and I understand that. And it gives the illusion that all of a sudden we're playing good teams, but you're not. You're playing each other. I don't know that this conference is a whole lot better than the All-American or whatever it's called. I'm not saying it's not better. It is, but I don't think it's a whole lot better than that. I don't think you can put it at the same level as the SEC or the Big Ten or the Pac-12 or Notre Dame for that matter. I just don't see how you do it.
Yeah, and the Big 12 beating itself isn't a case of what we're going to talk about right now with a conference cannibalizing itself because all the teams are so good. I think this is just you look at the overall scheme of things, what the Big 12 has played, and they could be very good, but we don't know because they don't play anybody. They score a lot of points, and that's it catches your eye, but I don't think that they. If the rankings stay as they are, Notre Dame wins out, and all the other top 4 teams win out. I can't put Oklahoma. I couldn't put Oklahoma or Oklahoma State in either because Oklahoma State hasn't played anybody. I don't care if they're undefeated. Yeah, you could say, well, Alabama has a loss and Notre Dame has a loss. Committee doesn't care. You're not going to put in Oklahoma State over Notre Dame.
If undefeated mattered, Alabama and Notre Dame wouldn't be in there right now.
Right, and Oklahoma, their one loss and their one conference loss was to Texas, who Notre Dame beat by 50 points.
And again, Texas is not a good football team.
No, and the other problem here is, say if Oklahoma beats Oklahoma State, both those teams went out in the final game of the year. Oklahoma beats Oklahoma State, and they're tied, like Baylor and TCU were last year. One true champion, right? Big 12?
I guess not.
No. So. Anyway, Oklahoma knocks off Baylor 44-34.
Real quick, do you think the NCAA should give them a dispensation where they can play a championship game without having the necessary number of teams just to end this nonsense?
Well, I know that they were going to apply, but I guess they didn't, and they thought, well, we'll give it one more shot. But you got to think that if
they are headed right down the same exact road they were on last year.
Well, I think they're going to be in that same position every year.
Mm-hmm.
Unless somebody completely runs the table, you're going to have a situation where you're going to have – you have this triumvirate of 4 good teams, and either one of them could beat any of the other ones, and you're going to end up with a 2-team tie or a 3-way tie.
Yeah, and then what?
Yeah, what happens if it was a three-way tie? What happens if because TCU still has to play Oklahoma. TCU has one loss now. So say TCU, well, I guess if they beat Oklahoma, then that's 2 losses. I guess there's no way they could really have a three-way tie.
Not this year, but it could happen. And then if you're a Big 12 fan, then you go, well, all 3 of our teams deserve to be there, I guess. I don't know.
And then you can't do a proper tiebreaker, and there's always been the talk of the Big 12 finally trying to get back to 12 teams. What would that be? Cincinnati's always thrown out there. Who else was always thrown out there?
I thought I heard Boise State was in the conversation
Boise State,
too.
Yeah, occasionally. You got to think that if they get spread out again because of that, they will do it. But I don't think if they don't make it this year, that won't be the reason. That won't be the reason.
No. They're just not good enough this year.
Yeah, you could say it was last year, but not this year. Like TCU and Baylor just aren't where they were last year either.
No.
So. Moving on down the rankings to another team that dropped the ball and one that was our favorite, and this, unfortunately, along with another loss, just a couple spots down, might take this conference out of the playoff conversation altogether. Oregon goes into Palo Alto, knocks off the Stanford Cardinal 38-36. Oregon, after struggling early in the season, has really found themselves as of late. They're starting to score points, and like it happens, these two teams, one's ranked, the other one's unranked. They beat each other. This is one of the better, conference games that we've had over the last several years in terms of a series. And Oregon knocks off the Cardinal 38-36. Stanford, their first conference loss.
Are you surprised, like I was, that Oregon is now 7-3? I hadn't been paying any attention to them, so I thought they were like Auburn or something, where they 4-4 or whatever, but.
Yeah, well, I mean, you think it's like, they lost to Michigan State, they lost to Utah, they lost to Washington State,
and they fall off the radar.
Crazy overtime game with ASU, and you're like, oh, well, okay, they're gone.
Yeah, they fall off the radar, and all of a sudden here they are, and you go, wait a minute, they beat Stanford, and then you go, wait a second, they're 7-3 now.
Yeah,
this Pac-12, I don't know how you handle this.
Unlike where the Big 12 is beating up on itself, and you don't know what to do, the Pac-12 is just good. All these teams, like Oregon, if. You got to look at their quarterback situation, because remember we talked about it early that the quarterback had only been in there for a week before the opening of the season, and you can't learn the Oregon offense in that time. And as things have gone along, they start. He learns more of the offense, and now they look comfortable. They look like the Oregon that we expected to see. And they're only 7-3, but they still knock off Stanford. They still have a big hand in this, because now with Utah losing, as we'll talk about, guess who leads the Pac-12 South? USC, who Oregon plays next week.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, Oregon's a big player. Maybe Stanford loses to Cal, and then Oregon makes it to the Pac-12 title game.
Well, here's the thing, too, that with the Pac-12. As it stands right now, if everything plays out the way it probably will, the Pac-12 is on the outside looking in. And can we really in good conscience say, okay, let's say that the top 4, let's say Ohio State drops a game or 2 and a slot opens up. Do we really feel comfortable putting a Big 12 team in there over a Pac-12 team? Which is what conceivably could happen, because right now the Pac-12, barring something completely unforeseen, they're just on the outside looking in because of there's 2 losses across the board. They don't have anybody that can make the case from a record standpoint that they should be involved.
Right. I mean, Stanford has 1 conference loss, but both, Stanford has 2 losses. Utah has 2. USC, who, as I said, is leading the Pac-12 South with a tiebreaker over Utah, they're 7-3. Like, what happens if USC wins the Pac-12?
I don't know.
At what would it be? 10-3, 11-3?
10-3.
10. Yeah,
because it would be 1 extra game over 12. Yeah, so 10-3.
It's hard to tell, and this was the problem we kind of outlined a long time ago for the Pac-12. Utah is good. Stanford is good. Oregon has come on strong. Cal was scoring a lot of points. They made some trouble. Washington State is 7-3, 5-2 in the conference. Washington State and Oregon have the same record.
Yeah.
USC has come on. UCLA, while they're up and down, still has talent. Arizona State's up and down. Arizona went and knocked off Utah. It's a solid conference from top to bottom, and ultimately that's the worst thing that could have happened to them.
Well, I think from a top to bottom standpoint, they're probably the best conference in college football. But they just have the most talented teams of the bunch. So this creates an argument that you go, maybe, as much as I don't like the idea, when you see stuff like this starting to take place, maybe it's time to take another look at how many teams we're allowing into this thing. Mm-hmm. Because right now, as it stands, and again, I'm not a big fan of the Big 12, but if Oklahoma State goes undefeated and they're sitting on the outside looking in while you've got 2 one-loss teams in there, they've got a legitimate bitch, like it or not. You've got the Pac-12 where they go, hey, look, we might have 2 losses, but look how good our conference is.
Well, yeah, you don't think that Stanford or Utah can knock off one of those Big 12 schools?
Oh, I have no doubt about it.
You don't think Stanford or Utah can knock off Notre Dame, which Stanford still has a chance to do?
I think that Stanford, I think you got Oregon, Stanford, USC. I don't know that I'm as sold on Utah as you are. I think they're good, but I don't know that they're quite good enough where they can knock off anybody they play.
Well, not anybody, but at the very least, they could compete with a lot of these teams.
Exactly. So you've got.
They would have just as much a chance to win as anybody else would.
Let's go down 4 notches in the Big 12, and where are we? I don't even know. I mean, because after after the Baylor, the TCU, I guess okay, it'll be Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, but after that, what do you got? You got a bunch of nothing.
Your 5th place team in the Big 12 is Texas.
Yeah,
3-4, 4-6.
So I just don't know how you handle this, because part of me is like, it's cool because it's very difficult to get into this thing, but we're still at a point where subjectivity still comes into it. Mm-hmm. And I don't know that that's fair to a conference like the Big 12 or the Pac-12 or even the Big 12 for that matter, or the Big 10 or anybody, the ACC. Because
I still like 6 teams.
If Clemson gets knocked out, they're going to drop right out of this thing.
Yeah. Well, in Clemson, we can look ahead at their schedule. North Carolina
they're good.
Moving up the standings.
Yeah.
They're going to play them in the ACC title game.
Right.
North Carolina's not a bad team. Here's the doomsday scenario. You ready for this? Clemson loses to North Carolina. Ohio State loses to Michigan or Iowa. Notre Dame loses to Stanford. Alabama was going to probably play, or I think for sure they're going to play Florida in the SEC title game. If Florida has a really good defense, maybe they slow down Alabama that one day.
Well, it's something else to think about, too. Auburn's got off the mats a little bit, and they're not horrible like we thought they were.
Right.
The Iron Bowl still has some significance in this.
All these teams still have big hurdles to jump ahead of them, and if they do start to lose and then we get descended into true chaos, what do you do with the Big 12? What do you do with the Pac-12? Mm-hmm. What do you do with a 2-loss LSU? Or 3, 2-loss. They're going to fall now. But, what do you do with Michigan State if they win out but they don't win the Big 10? There's a lot of up in the air still with these playoff rankings.
I mean, I love the idea of the 4-team playoff. It was so fantastic last year. And the last thing I want to see is it get diluted because we start putting too many teams into it.
Yeah.
But this season's making a real strong case for going with 6 teams, or maybe even 8.
I think we've had the conversation before, and I think 8 is the limit.
8's got to be the limit. You cannot go any further than that. I agree.
Could not go further than 8. 6, I like 6, but then you have to figure where do you play those other games and how do you deal with the buys. I think if you do 6, you could have those quarterfinal games or those first round games like a week or 2 after the end of the regular season and then play the actual semifinal games on New Year's Day.
Yeah.
And just keep it as it is. And I guess you would do the same thing with 8. But
I think, honestly, as big as this thing was last year, and I know it sounds counterintuitive to say, okay, if we add to it, it will add to it, because sometimes, like in the basketball tournament, where it's now like 76 teams and you're just like, we don't care. But I think in this case, if you put this thing at 8 teams, and you're right, you have to stop it at that point, but 8 teams makes this a very, very interesting conversation.
I think 8 might be too much this season, because let's say you got Clemson, Alabama, Ohio State, Notre Dame, then Big 12 champ, Pac-12 champ, and that's your 6. Who do you put in after that?
Boy, that's
like LSU?
I think you've got 8 teams that are worthy of a playoff spot this year. I think you do. Now, and the argument's always going to be, if you get 8, number 9 is going to complain. Well, you can make it 70 teams, and Team 71 is going to complain.
Right,
that's not the issue.
I have less of a care for number 9's concern than I do number 5.
Right.
You know, like the further you get down, it's like you're not going to win. Great, like you want to get in a playoff game. I'm sorry, you're not worth my time. I could definitely go for 6. That way, at the very least, the Power 5 conference champions will have their shot at making it in.
Mm-hmm.
And then then you get either one of the second place teams, or you get Notre Dame to pop in there, or maybe you get a good run by one of the group of 5 teams.
Yeah. Well, see, that's the thing too. Notre Dame is really talked about wrenches being thrown in the gears. The biggest wrench of all is Notre Dame, because last year they weren't a consideration.
Yeah.
This year, the spot they take in the playoff automatically knocks out a Power 5 conference. It's just no other way around it.
Yeah.
So I don't know, 6. I'm okay with 6. You know, people are going to complain. Then we'll say Ohio State got a bye when Alabama deserved it. Hey, you know what? That's all well and good. I'm just happy to be in the playoff. Would you rather be on the outside looking in? I guess would be my counter argument to that.
Yeah.
But it's just starting to get crazy. It's going to get even crazier as we go.
Let's continue on down the rankings. We left off with Stanford losing to Oregon. You know, we love Stanford, but that's a tough one.
That hurt. Yeah.
Number 8 was Oklahoma State, who had to pull one out against the Iowa State Cyclones, 35-31. Not good if you're Oklahoma State. You have a big win, and then the next week you have to rally in the fourth quarter against Iowa State.
Yeah, but I'm not going to hold that against them, because if I'm not going to hold it against other teams, I can't hold it against Oklahoma State.
I'm going to hold that one against Oklahoma State. Iowa State's not very good.
No, they're not.
Number 9, LSU, after losing big to Alabama, Leonard Fournette getting shut down. It happens for the second straight week. Arkansas goes into Death Valley and knocks off the Tigers 31-14. Arkansas secretly has come from behind, been a very strong competitor down the stretch. So now, Greg.
My Toledo Rockets have to be the best team in the country, don't they?
Toledo beat Arkansas, who beat LSU, but they also beat Arkansas beat somebody, or Arkansas beat Ole Miss, who beat Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
So technically, Toledo has beaten LSU and Alabama this season.
I know. You think you'd get a little respect for that, but no, of course not.
Well, when you lose at home to Northern Illinois.
Well, that's just a given. That's just the way it goes. You got to just throw that one out. That's
if Alabama's not getting knocked down for one loss, Toledo should get the same respect.
Exactly. Yeah, that's like the East German judge. You just throw out that score because they're always going to lose to Northern Illinois. I just think they should stop scheduling Northern Illinois. It would solve a lot of problems.
Well, aren't they in the same conference?
Yeah, but so what? Ohio State doesn't play Iowa this year. You don't hear anybody complaining about that.
How many teams are in the MAC? 10?
Like 35? I don't know. I think 12 maybe? Maybe even 14. I'm not sure. It's a bunch. Every directional school in Michigan's in it, and then you've got Ohio, Toledo, Miami,
all playing for the right to play
Detroit,
the conference championship game in Detroit,
and then go back to Detroit 2 weeks later.
And if they win, they get to go to the Little Caesars Bowl in Detroit.
Yes. Although they also send a MAC team to that bowl they play in Birmingham after everything else is done.
Yeah.
The one where you go,
that's be the second place team in the MAC and play in Birmingham instead.
I would. Yeah. I've been to Detroit. I've been to Detroit. I don't want to go there. It's not a reward to get to go to Detroit. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's move along here. We've established the Rockets are the best team in the country, but no one else seems to agree with that, so we'll move along.
Two subpar games for Leonard Fournette. He was such a beast. It's strange to see him shut down in 2 straight weeks like that.
Yeah.
Number 10 was the Utah Utes, and as we said, this has thrown the Pac-12 really asunder. As it's if Stanford went down, that's one thing. If just Utah went down, that's one thing. But to have the top 2 teams of the conference both lose on the same weekend, that really hurts. Utah falls to Arizona in double overtime, 37-30. Anu Solomon for the Wildcats was really instrumental in this game. 277 yards, 2 TDs. Freaking Wildcats can't just play cool and let Utah, in the South. Now with Utah losing, as I said, USC technically leads the Pac-12 South.
Well, USC, who 2 weeks ago we had pretty much forgotten about. And then you look at Arizona, and I think, wow, they're 6-5. It's just crazy. The Pac-12. But you know what? We predicted this way back at the beginning of the season. This conference was going to run into this problem, and it's exactly what's happening. There are just too many good teams, and you don't get a week off in that conference, really. You thought maybe with
that
Washington
would ever be a bad team. You know, you wouldn't think that would ever be a bad thing.
No, and it shouldn't be, but it's going to be. And that's, and again, we go right back to, well, maybe we should put 6 teams in this thing. But yeah, Utah and Stanford losing, that was my first thought, was this really screws the Pac-12.
But, if you just are a Pac-12 football fan, you don't really care about the other football around the country, you really enjoyed the season. It's been great football in the conference. But in terms of the national picture, kind of kills them, which sucks as a Pac-12 fan myself.
Well, they're already kind of up against it because of and I know a lot of people there is no East Coast bias. There is.
Oh, it exists.
It absolutely exists.
How many people stayed up and watched the Utah-Arizona game? How many people stayed up and watched the UCLA-Wazoo game late at night like that? Not very many. And so some of these late night Pac-12 games get shoved under the rug when they're some of the best football of the weekend. Being a college football fan, I love it when there's a game on that late. It's like, cool, I've got something to watch at 11 o'clock at night. But you're right, most people don't stay up to watch it. So they've got the East Coast bias thing going against them. They've got their best teams all have 2 losses, and I don't know. I just can't justify putting a Big 12 team in over one of these guys. Yeah, but it's probably going to happen. Number 11 was the Florida Gators. They dispatched of South Carolina fairly simply 24-14. Michigan State 24-7 over Maryland. Michigan, number 14 in the country, survives the feistiest of feisty Indiana Hoosiers. Double overtime, 48-41. You were watching this one and texting me, Greg. What'd you see out of this one?
I tell you what I saw out of this one. Indiana's about 2 defensive players from being a pretty good football team. They just can't stop anyone. That's their biggest issue. But they played Ohio State tough. They played Michigan State tough. I think they were in a position to win all 3 of those games this year. I can't just say that I think Indiana's good. They just can't beat anybody, if that makes any sense.
They did lose to Michigan State 52-26.
Oh, was that? But they were in that game for a while.
They were tight with Iowa. They were tight with Michigan. They were tight with Ohio State. They lost to Rutgers by 3.
Yeah.
They're winless in the conference, but they should, they played with 2 of the better teams in their division. They played with the best team in the other division, and they lost to Rutgers by 3.
Well, and that Michigan State game too, they were in that game for a good long while. That wasn't the blow. I mean, it was a blowout, no question about it. But a lot of that was stuff that took place in the fourth quarter.
Yeah,
they were tight for the first 3 quarters of that game. I don't know what to make of them, but with every game I see like this, I feel a little bit better about how much trouble Ohio State had finishing off this team.
Yeah. Well, luckily for winless in Conference Indiana and winless in Conference Maryland, they play each other next weekend.
I got to think the Hoosiers. You know what? I would say the Hoosiers would walk away with that easily, but they lost to freaking Rutgers.
Yeah, Rutgers has one, and that's Rutgers' 1 win in conference. But again, Rutgers was also a 4th down spike away from beating Michigan State. So, number 15, the TCU Horned Frogs, a tight one against 0-10 Kansas, 23-17. Not exactly a good bounce back effort for TCU.
No, they're at home playing the worst team in big school college football, and they can't win by more than 6.
Yeah,
come on.
And the big thing for TCU in this game, Trevon Boykin, their quarterback, injured. So we'll see how that plays down the stretch there for the Big 12. Florida State knocks off NC State 34-14. Northwestern keeps winning 21-14. UCLA with another upset loss this season. Wazoo. The Cougs. Look at the Cougs.
7-3.
7-3, 5-2 with throwing a winning touchdown with 3 seconds remaining to beat the Bruins and their stupid Navy SEAL uniforms in the Rose Bowl, 31-27.
Wazoo, this is like the heyday of the Ryan Leaf era here for these guys. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love it.
Did you see the helmets on UCLA?
I did not. Were they those horrible what were they? Were they the blue ones?
Well, they're like this midnight blue, almost black. But the logo that they put on the helmet this week, because it was Veterans Day week, and they wanted to support the connection they have with the Navy SEALs, which is, training with them for like 3 days in the off season this past year. There's like a Navy SEAL tattoo that's like a bony frog thing.
Okay, yeah.
That was on their helmets.
Oh, for Pete's sake. Look, nobody
You're UCLA. You have beautiful uniforms. Stop doing that.
Exactly, but I'm all for supporting the troops and all that, but college football and the NFL, we got to step away from all the camouflage and the tenuous at best connections that you have, like 3 days with the SEALs. Come on now. It's just too much at this point. But anyway.
Unless you're one of the service academies.
Yeah, and wear all the camouflage you want.
Like number 20, 8-1, 6-0 in conference, 55-14 win, Navy. Look at them. Look at the midshipmen.
That's right.
Cruising along their first year in conference, and they stay undefeated.
Big time. I love this team. I would love to see them make one of the big bowls. I don't know if it'll happen, but wow.
Well, the good thing for Navy is right now they're the highest ranked group of 5 team.
Yeah.
And they got some help, a little help, as the big matchup in the American Conference was number 21 Memphis, number 24 Houston. Houston has a 21-point fourth quarter to knock off Memphis 35-34. Houston stays undefeated, 6-0 in conference, but they're still behind Navy. You got to think this win pushes them up a little bit, and Houston and Navy still have to play each other, I believe.
Yeah, probably.
And I know if it's not on their schedule, they do play them in 2 weeks.
Yes, they do.
There's also a conference championship game in the American Conference. So that would be for the title of the Western Division, Navy and Houston, and then they would play Temple in the conference championship game.
Temple, who, as we move down the list here, didn't have a good week either.
Oh, they got beat up pretty badly by the South Florida Bulls. USF knocks off the Owls 44-23. Temple falls out of the rankings. Another thing that's not great for Notre Dame in terms of them trying to hold on to ranked teams on their list.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to think USC is going to pop up back in the rankings this week, so that'll help Notre Dame as well.
Yeah.
Last team that was ranked that played the number 23 North Carolina Tar Heels. We mentioned them. They're sneaking up. They're undefeated in conference, 9-1 overall. Scheduled to play Clemson in the ACC title game as North Carolina knocks off Miami 59-21.
15. Boy, I tell you, the U has fallen on hard times, hasn't it?
Losing to North Carolina.
50, yeah, and giving up 59 points. Mm-hmm. Wow. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you were going to bring it up or not, but one more game that I wanted to throw in.
Sure.
How about the New Mexico? I don't know if it's state or just New Mexico. The Lobos, 39.5-point underdogs, go in and they beat Boise State.
Yeah, that is the Lobos, New Mexico Lobos. How about that? Yeah, Boise State not
so good this year.
Yeah, it's funny how those mid-major schools that they get those big runs and you think, oh well, they're going to be good forever, and then they're not because they're mid-major schools.
Well, it only takes really one bad recruiting class to send the whole thing tumbling down.
Yeah, they're not any of these big schools that can just stay up with you every year.
Yeah, because if they have a bad season, then a lot of the shine comes off them right away. Mm-hmm. It's not like if you're a Clemson or a USC, UCLA, somebody like that, where you can have a bad run, but you're still USC, Clemson, or whoever. This isn't the case with Boise State.
No.
But yeah, the Lobos, unbelievable.
Yeah. So to recap, the ranked teams that lose this week: Mississippi State, but they lost to number 2 Alabama. They were number 17. Number 6 Baylor goes down to number 12 Oklahoma. Number 7 Stanford goes down to Oregon. Number 9 LSU goes down to Arkansas. Number 10 Arizona or number 10 Utah goes down to Arizona. And UCLA, number 19, loses to Wazoo. Number 21 Memphis goes down to number 24 Houston. Number 22 Temple goes down to South Florida. So we're going to have some shakeup in the top 10 for sure. Losing Baylor, Stanford, and LSU and Utah, 4 top 10 teams. And then you get some movement at the back end with UCLA 19 and then Memphis and Temple going down.
How far do you think North Carolina might jump up at this point? I'm not saying they're going to jump all the way to the top 10, but you got to start moving them up a little bit, don't you?
They were 23. I got to think that they move up to at least like 14.
I'm thinking
right?
14, 15 range, yeah.
Yeah, I think that'd be appropriate for them.
Houston's probably going to get a little bump after knocking off Memphis.
Yep. And you got to think Navy gets moved up a little bit further as well. Because you lose 4 top 10 teams. So you got to think Oklahoma State's going to move probably up. Oklahoma State or Oklahoma probably going to be 6-7. 11 is Florida. They probably move all the way up to 8. Michigan State probably goes to 9. Michigan probably goes to 10.
I'm looking at the AP poll, the coaches poll, and the AP, the two, not the playoff poll, but
right.
Yeah,
the AP, because the AP's already released their rankings.
Mm-hmm.
The AP was already off from the playoff poll anyway.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get an idea of what we might see, what change. Like they've got North Carolina up to 12 on both polls. So
yeah,
and it's going to be again, a lot of wrenches got thrown in the gears this weekend, and now we've got Ohio State going to start the run with Michigan State and Michigan coming up here. That could throw things. It's just going to be nutty.
Yeah, I think the big difference between the two polls, at least in terms of teams that have any consequence on the New Year's Day bowls, Houston is at 13 and 14 in the two in the AP and coaches. Navy is all the way down at 19.
Well, I got to be honest. As much as I love the midshipmen, I don't like their chances against Houston a whole lot.
No, but
stranger things have happened.
Still be fun.
Yeah,
if Navy can play on New Year's Day or something like that,
that would be awesome.
Yeah. So let's look ahead to next week real quick. I can't, off the top of my head, I don't know if there's anything really big.
Michigan State, Ohio State.
Is that no Michigan State, Ohio State?
Right.
There's their game of the weekend in terms of rankings. Utah UCLA was supposed to be a big game. Both those teams losing, not as important now. Memphis Temple, again, could have been a semi-important game for the American Conference, but both those teams are probably going to fall.
I have a quick question. Why is Toledo and Bowling Green, why are they playing at 6:30 and they're already in the first quarter? I mean, I get it's Tuesday night action and all that, but why did you start the game at 5:30? There must be a doubleheader, doubleheader action tonight. Nice.
I don't know.
Okay. Anyway, go ahead.
Maybe they got to get out for the basketball team. TCU, Oklahoma, of course. Baylor, Oklahoma State, as the Big 12 tries to settle itself out.
That'll be an important game.
Yeah. And Alabama, Charleston Southern.
Ooh, there's a clash of the Titans right there.
Northwestern, Wisconsin. Okay, yeah, that's something I wanted to mention. Wisconsin's 25. Okay. You don't think that it's easy to see some of the teams that slide into the back end of these rankings that help boost up some of the other teams when it comes to, we beat a ranked team. So Iowa has wins over two ranked teams right now. Northwestern and Wisconsin.
Okay.
Is Wisconsin a top 25 team?
I don't think so. I mean, I suppose, but I'm looking at the other two polls here, and do I think Wisconsin would beat Mississippi State? Probably not. They're not going to beat USC. I don't like their chances against Oregon. I mean, they've got them at 20 and 21 on the two voting polls here. Give me a break.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's
going to get good.
It's always interesting because I know there's the two Big 12 guys on the panel are Barry Alvarez and Tom Osborne, and while neither of their teams are up there, the Big 12 or the conferences still get money when these teams make the playoffs.
Sure. And
so they want their teams in the playoff.
Well, I think that you brought it up earlier. Is there a little bit of cronyism going on? Barry Alvarez and Tom Osborne, and probably. And I mean, yes, we talk about it. We're amazed at Iowa's streak, but they're not the 5th or 6th best team in the country. No.
And they're up there for Big Ten reasons.
Well, I think that, and I think the other thing that I brought up earlier is that it's partially, too, because the committee likes new things. They like new teams. They like shiny new things. And Iowa, oh, boy, what a story they are this year. A little bit more should get settled over the weekend, and we'll start getting a clearer picture. But then again, the picture may get even more muddled as we move along here, which I'm kind of hoping for.
Move on to the NFL, and I don't know. If there's anything this week taught us, it's that officially there are 2 good teams, 2 okay teams, and then a whole bunch of garbage.
Yeah, a lot of garbage.
Garbage.
An awful lot of garbage.
Let's
go ahead. Where do you want to start? You want to start with that disaster on Thursday?
Let's get that out of the way. So the color rush burst onto the NFL scene on Thursday. The Bills, a big win for them in terms of the wild card spot. They beat the Jets 22-17. Both teams are tied at 5-4. The Bills now have the tiebreaker. The only interesting thing that I could pull out of this game for me is the fact that a bunch of colorblind NFL fans, red-green colorblind, that's a real thing, they couldn't tell who was who. And nobody thought of this. So all these people were like, I don't know who has the ball. I don't know who scored. Because you had two teams with all red, all green, and white helmets.
Yeah.
If you're a red-green colorblind person, you have no idea who's on the field.
So any wide shot, they really had no clue who was who.
No.
Wow. And not only that, but it was just all sorts of ugly. I'm sorry. It was just awful. Just awful.
But the Bills, a big win in terms of the wild card standings. I think they're the number 6 team right now with all the tiebreakers. They have a playoff stop right now after it's been a little tenuous. A good comeback there for Tyrod Taylor, but
yeah, they're back in it. You liked them at the beginning of the season, and they're kind of right where you thought they'd be. I don't think the record's quite as good as you thought it was going to be, but here they are.
No. Let's move on to Sunday. Let's start with your Packers, a team that I thought was pretty good 3 weeks ago, and now they have 3 straight losses to the Broncos and Panthers, which at the time you could say, well, the Broncos played their best game of the season. The Panthers were really good. 2 tough losses for the Packers, but coming home to Lambeau against a team they haven't lost to in Lambeau since 1991, things were going to be okay.
I just have to make a correction on that. They haven't lost in Wisconsin since because I think they used to do that thing where they played a couple games in Milwaukee every year. The Pack did,
right?
But that doesn't change the fact that this Lions team. I'd almost be willing to swallow this if it had happened at Ford Field, but at Lambeau, you let this happen?
And against these Lions?
Against these Lions. And you know what? They just shut down the Packers' offense. There's no other way to put it. It was horrible. The Packers can't run the ball. They're terrible on defense, and I've been saying it all season long, and now we're finally starting to see it. This is not a good football team.
Yeah, it's tough to see, and Aaron Rodgers still throws for 333 and 2 touchdowns. That's normally a game that's going to get you across if you're the Packers. But James Starks, 15 carries, 42 yards.
And look at the pass attempts for Aaron Rodgers, 61 pass attempts.
Yeah.
That's not good.
What do the Packers need to do? I mean, they're in second place in the division right now. They're not even leading.
Yeah.
What do they have to do? They're still in a playoff spot, but
what do they got to do? They've got to address issues that have been there on defense since basically they won the Super Bowl the last time. But I don't know if they can't fix it or if they're making bad draft picks or they're just not looking at it. But that's the first problem they have. Obviously, the Jordy Nelson loss is starting to really make itself apparent. They don't have a real good deep threat, but and I don't like Mike McCarthy. I don't think he's a good coach. I think he's okay, but this is just not a good football team, and they're headed down the other side of the hill.
If they don't win the division, and I think based on the state of the rest of the league, they're still going to make the playoffs.
Yeah,
but if they don't win their first playoff game because they're going to have to play on the road, I think they would probably play at who would be the third division. They probably have to play at the Vikings at this point, weren't they?
I don't know. But I think McCarthy, I think they got to take a serious look at him at this point because you've got good personnel there, but something's not clicking right with this team. I mean, they won a Super Bowl, 4 years ago, 5? I don't remember now. 2010, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That's 5 years. That's a long time in the NFL. And I don't know how long you can ride that Super Bowl win before you finally start going, hey, this team's got some issues here. So they're not good. And now all of a sudden my irrational confidence Vikings are in first place in the division. Mm-hmm. So
moving down the barrel of suck.
Oh, wow.
Cowboys, Buccaneers.
Remember back when we said the Cowboys had to go 4-4 with Romo out? They are now 0-7 in that stretch.
0-7. Tony Romo is coming back this week for the Cowboys.
And everybody assumes they're just going to reel off 7 straight wins and make the playoffs. I just don't know. I don't know what. Is he going to make that big a difference?
even still, like, yeah, you can blame the quarterback, but only 6 points against the Buccaneers.
Yeah.
And you lose 10-6.
Yeah.
It's not like this was like a close one. If we just had Tony, would have put it over the top. No. This was garbage.
Here's the question at this point. Do you bring back Romo and try to make a run at a playoff spot, or do you say, you know what, let's just tank it?
I think they do, because you look at the rest of that division and you say we're better than everybody else in this division. And so this is what the Cowboys have the rest of the way. They have the Dolphins. They're at the Dolphins this week.
That's not an easy win.
But winnable.
Yeah, winnable, but
I think the problem. I think the real problem is in 2 weeks they play the Panthers on Thanksgiving. That's a loss.
More than likely,
right?
Yeah.
And that puts them at 8 losses, so they got to get to 8-8. Then they go to Washington. They play the Packers in Lambeau. They play the Jets. They play the Bills. They play the Redskins. Again, twice.
That's the thing. I don't think this Washington team they're not good, but they're certainly capable of beating Dallas. Look what they did to New Orleans on Sunday.
Yeah.
But then again, you've got this NFC East where I'm not so sure 7-9 wouldn't win that division.
Well, the Giants are 5-5. You know, they had a devastating loss over the weekend frustratingly. And you look at all their losses, and man, the Giants wish they could have a few of those back.
Oh,
you know?
Sure, yeah.
It just losing them at the last second, and that's been the story of their season. We'll talk about that in a second, but I think the Cowboys and of course Jerry Jones and even his puppet Jason Garrett really believe that Tony Romo can come back and win 7 games for him.
Okay, we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, good luck.
We'll see.
I don't see it, but good luck to you.
I mean, I still think best case scenario or worst case scenario, they still got to go 5-2. They still got to at least get to 7-9 and hope that the rest of that division is just terrible. I think it's a tall order to fill. I mean, I'd love to see him try it, but I don't think it's going to happen.
I think their best case scenario is 8-8.
Yeah,
and the Giants, they're not half bad. They've had some bad luck losses. I think the Giants are still in the best position to do. And obviously, they're in the best position. They're in first place. But what I mean by that is they're the most cohesive unit right now.
Right.
In the NFC East. And they could easily get to 9 wins. And I think even if they get to 8-8, that has to eliminate the Cowboys.
I just think the Cowboys, they have really no margin for error at this point.
No, almost none.
Yeah.
Almost none.
Yeah.
You mentioned those Panthers. One of the 2 good teams in this league. 27-10 over the Titans. They do what they're supposed to do. They're 9-0. Best team in the NFC, clearly. I think this means that they've won 16 games in a row also.
Really?
They won the last 7 games of last year, I think.
No, because I want to say like they were like 2 and something or whatever when they won that on that run to win the division last year. Yeah,
maybe it's 5 in a row. Either way, I think they've won more than their share.
I think at this point we're looking at a rematch of the 2004 Super Bowl, Panthers Patriots.
Yeah.
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 I like this Panthers team. They're good. I mean, they're not exciting to watch, but they win and they
grind it out. They're physical.
Yeah.
Cam Newton is my pick for MVP right now. It's either him or Tom Brady. Really. And maybe you're just bored of Tom Brady and give it to Cam Newton.
Yeah.
Cam Newton's fun.
Well, the nice thing about this Panthers team is they're a team that the style of football they play, they don't slump easy because
it's very portable.
Right. They can play anywhere with it, and it's not like they're dependent on just one aspect of their game. So, but they're good. I like them. They're easily, I think, by far and away the best team in the NFC right now.
I wish they could throw a little bit better, but
yeah.
I also like power football a whole lot.
Yeah.
So I like these Panthers. 9-0, good job, Panthers. Move on down again. I don't even know where to go. Just like so much suck. So I guess it's moving down the way ESPN has them listed.
Yeah.
Bears Rams. The Rams had so much promise. They were 2 weeks ago you said, oh, well, they're in wild card contention. They lose to the Vikings. All right, that's a tough one. Then they lose to the Bears at home, 37-13. The Bears are surprisingly 4-5.
Mm-hmm.
And the Rams are also 4-5, but on a different whole connotation to their 4-5 versus the Bears 4-5.
How many times have we said this season that the Rams have to win the games they're supposed to win, and that's their biggest problem is that they can't win the games they're supposed to win. This is a perfect example of that.
Mm-hmm. Well, they're making a change. Nick Foles is being benched this week for Chase Keenum.
Okay,
or not Chase, he's Case Keenum. Excuse me,
Case Keenum.
Former University of Houston quarterback. I don't know.
We'll see.
I can't wait to have this be my pathetic football team. Can't wait to celebrate 4-5 with the Los Angeles Rams. I don't know.
I don't the Chargers to choose from too, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, but the Bears 4-5. Jay Cutler's made a little rally with this team. They're not going to go anywhere, but 4-5 for them is respectable considering
I'm pretty sure we had them only winning about 4 games this year, so they're already doing better than I expected them to do.
Yeah. Move on down to another pair of 4-win teams. The Redskins go into or welcome in the Saints and knocking them off 47-14. Saints looked good for like 3 weeks and then back into the shitter with them. And in Washington, they're not half bad. They're a half game behind the Giants in the NFC East, and they're okay.
Well, Kirk Cousins, okay, last year we were all over Kirk Cousins. Now this year he's actually finally starting to play a little bit like the guy we thought he was.
Yeah, 20-25 for 324 yards and 4 TDs.
Mm-hmm.
Not bad.
Yeah.
But also letting up 47. The Saints cost Rob Ryan his job.
Well, I've always thought Rob Ryan was just amazingly overrated, just way overrated. I never thought he was as good as. I don't understand how he kept getting these jobs.
Well, he kept getting the jobs because he's related to Rex and their dad buddy.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Like that, it's the lineage thing, and it gave him a connotation. And he was half decent for a little while when they were winning games.
Yeah, half decent, but again.
But it's not hard to be a defensive coordinator for a team that was putting up 40 points a game like the Saints used to do.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that kind of inflated his value a little bit. Oh God! So how many 4-win teams are in this damn league right now?
Well, let's see. You got 32 teams. There's 4 good ones, so 28.
The Dolphins and Eagles both 4-5 after Miami knocks off the Eagles by 20-19 in Philly.
This is two. I don't even know what to say about this. Two really slightly below average football teams, and so what?
No, the Packers are kind of surprising, but I don't know what to say there. Cowboys, Buccaneers don't know what to say. Rams, Bears don't know what to say. Washington, New Orleans don't know what to say. Dolphins, Eagles don't know what to say. The Steelers knock off the Browns 30-9.
Johnny Manziel puts up huge numbers, but only manages 9 points.
Yeah, Ben Roethlisberger came off the bench. They were supposed to give him a week off, and then Landry Jones got hurt. So Ben Roethlisberger came in, and it's one of those things like he was injured and you didn't want to play him, but then he came in and looked pretty damn good with 379 yards and 3 TDs.
Yeah, but let's not forget who he was playing against too.
Yeah, but still. So the Steelers are 6-4. They're in a wild card spot right now.
Yeah.
And I almost want to say that the AFC playoff picture's kind of wrapped up, but I still have faith in one team on the outside looking in. We'll talk about them in a second.
Okay.
Well, less faith, but whatever. Again, reaching into the bag of suck. Jaguars knock off the Ravens. Second win this season where the Jaguars were saved by a late penalty call. A penalty call that the NFL has admitted shouldn't have been called. Put the Jaguars in field goal range for the game winner as time expired, 22-20.
Are you telling me that the NFL made a mistake with officiating? I'm shocked. Just shocked.
Shocked?
Just shocked. I'm speechless about that. Look at the Jaguars, 3-6.
Yeah, there was a legitimate fear from my end that the Jaguars are a game behind the Colts for the division lead. And the Colts, they have friends at the top of the division now. We'll talk about them in a bit as well. Probably the more surprising team, and a team that I'm generally happy for, the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah.
Your Irrational Confidence Vikings with a big win on the road at my Irrational Confidence Raiders. 30-14, the Vikings 7-2 on top of the NFC North.
I'm disappointed. I like the fact that the Vikings are doing well because I thought they would be pretty good this year, but I really wanted the Raiders to win this game.
Me too.
I mean, I'm not knocking the Vikings.
The Raiders are now a full game behind the last wild card spot.
I'm not knocking the Vikings at all. I like the Vikings a lot, but they had a little room to work with where the Raiders didn't. I thought the Raiders need to get this one. The Vikings will be okay if they lose it, but the Raiders just had a hell of a time with the Vikings, and
especially Adrian Peterson.
Yeah,
203 yards in a TD. He's looking like Adrian Peterson.
Yep.
But Derek Carr put up some big numbers for Oakland as well as Amari Cooper. That's a good connection. The Raiders are the good thing at the very least. The Raiders are on the way.
Yes.
They don't look terrible.
No, they don't look hopeless. I mean, a couple of years ago they looked hopeless. You just looked at it and thought they looked like the Cleveland Browns level of hopeless. So you thought there's just no way.
It's almost to a point where watching this version of the Raiders this season makes me almost want them to come to Los Angeles a tiny bit.
Well, I watch them.
A little, but not enough where I want to deal with Raider fans on a weekly basis.
I watch them, and I think, man, I love those uniforms, and I remember them from back when I was a kid and how good they were, and I think, I could be a Raiders fan pretty easy. I
could, too, if it weren't for the fact that I don't want to be a Raiders fan.
Mm-hmm. That does have a bit of a stigma attached to it, yes.
Right? It's like, oh, yeah, I could be a fan of the Raiders. I just don't want to be a Raiders fan.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so the Vikings continue to chug along pretty nice in Mike Zimmer's second season.
Yep.
Good job. We talked about the Giants, and they lost to the other legitimately good team in this league and probably the best team in the league right now. Probably the Super Bowl favorite, again, because – of course they are, and of course they won the game in the fashion they did. Patriots go into the MetLife Stadium to knock off the Giants 27-26, another close loss for the Giants. And this one, they have nobody but themselves to blame.
Nope.
With 2 minutes left, or just over 2 minutes left, they're, first and goal? They run 3 passing plays, and none of them were complete. They don't get the touchdown, so they kick a field goal to go up. But they burned almost no time off the clock. Like, run the ball once. Kill some clock. Make them use a timeout. Do something.
Oh, they shot themselves in the foot so many times in this game that it's hard to even keep track, really.
And then the Patriots get the ball back with like a minute 40 left. You give Tom Brady a minute 40 to get into field goal range and a timeout?
My thoughts exactly.
Okay, great. And then they do eventually force the Patriots into a fourth down situation and then give them the entire middle of the field to just dump it to Danny Amendola.
Well, let's back up for a second here. How about the sure interception that was dropped by the Giants?
Yep. So what was that, the first play of the Patriots drive?
Yes.
Guy goes up, gets it, falls on his head, drops the ball.
Yeah. and the thing of it, too, is it was just a very bad pass by Tom Brady because the other guy, there were 2 Giants guys that could have had that interception, but they just – I don't know how many times the Patriots could hand them this game, and they just didn't seem to want it. Is the best way I can put it.
But then in the most Patriots way possible, they convert that fourth down, and then they get just inside field goal range. They kick a field goal that goes just inside the upright.
Yes,
sir.
Because
of course they do. The Patriots pull this one out of their asses, 27-26, 9-0 on the season.
I looked at that when they got the ball with a minute 40 and a timeout, and I thought,
you just say, of course.
Of course. There's just no way. There's no way they're going to lose this game. And the only way they could have lost it would have been if he threw a dumb interception, which he did, but the Giants didn't bother to catch it, and that's the way it goes. But
and you look at when the Giants were throwing the ball on the previous possession, Odell Beckham Jr. had a touchdown, and he just didn't decide to hold on to the ball.
Yeah,
he got knocked out of his hands, but
a lot of controversy over that catch. But on today's rules, I thought it was pretty clearly not a catch.
Yeah, I mean. This is the thing about it. Yeah, he got both hands on the ball. He had possession. He got both feet down. And you think that as soon as that happens in the end zone, it's supposed to be a catch. But he got the ball knocked out of his hands while he was still right after that second foot went down. And so it's with the way the game is called today, like if it were me, I would say, yeah, I'd like that to be a touchdown. But the way the game's called, I knew immediately that's not a touchdown.
And the first time I watched it, the first replay I saw, I said, no, it's not a touchdown. And it's just, but on that topic, something does need to be done about these catch rules.
It's ridiculous.
It really is. It's just gotten to the point where, I mean, you've got Chris Collinsworth came right out and said, I don't know what a catch is anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he gets paid to watch football games, and he doesn't know. No one knows, but
it's ridiculous.
But you know what, though? This is shaping up. I think the Giants were 9-7 the last time the Patriots went on an undefeated run like this, and they ended up knocking them off in the Super Bowl, so you never know.
Yeah, the thing that's sad is that, like, yeah, the Panthers are 9-0, and this is all fun. If the Patriots keep doing what they're doing, for whatever reason, the Giants have this thing against the Patriots. They always play them tight, or they've beaten them a good share of the last few times they played. So you almost want, like, if the Patriots do make the Super Bowl again, you almost want it to be the Giants.
Mm-hmm.
Just because they have, the crystal ball on how to beat them.
Well, was it 2007 the Patriots went 16-0 in the regular season? Whatever year it was, doesn't matter what year it was, but the last game of the year they played the Giants, and it was another game like this where the Giants lost by a point or two, and then they got in the Giants have their number in the Super Bowl. I mean, if you get the Patriots-Giants in the Super Bowl, I'm betting Giants all the way. I don't care.
Yeah,
and but the Patriots right now, it's just like, oh my God, I appreciate Tom Brady, one of the greatest quarterbacks ever, the whole bit. Belichick, one of the greatest coaches, but God, I'm just tired of him. It's just fatigue. It's not dislike. It's just like we need to see somebody else.
Well, and we'll transition right from the Patriots to the Broncos here in a second, but just to get that thread, you look at how Peyton Manning has played, and you just see like, oh, he's done. He's physically done.
Yeah.
And this is something that Bill Simmons brought up, I think, a week ago or two. How long could Tom Brady doesn't get hit?
No.
Tom Brady doesn't ever seem to be injured or ailing or sore. In the way he plays, how long can Tom Brady legitimately play for?
He could go on a few more years. I mean, I don't think that another 3 years is out of the question at all.
No, and he's only, a year younger than Peyton Manning?
Mm-hmm.
But Peyton Manning looks and feels like 10 years older than Brady.
It's just amazing to me, having seen both of these things take place, how similar this is to the Marino-Montana thing. And that Marino just seemed to lose it faster, like Peyton's losing it faster compared to Brady. Montana just looked like he could go on forever, and he just finally retired. I don't know. It's as long as Brady's there at quarterback, they're going to be tough, and you just can't give them a minute 40 and one timeout. They're going to beat you every single time.
No, it's just run the ball one time.
Yeah, just really
give him like 30 less seconds.
Really bad planning, really bad play calling by the Giants in that game at the end there. They could have had it.
So let's transition. I just mentioned him, Peyton Manning. In the first quarter, he breaks the NFL all-time passing mark, knocks off Brett Favre. Brett Favre sent a nice video of him hunting in a tree and took a video on his iPhone and congratulated Peyton on getting there.
Oh, jeez.
But that was the only good thing for Peyton on the day. Ends up 5 of 20 for 25 yards, 4 interceptions. Gets benched in favor of Brock Osweiler late in this game, and the Broncos get beat 29-13 by a 4-5 Chiefs team
in Denver.
In Denver, Peyton had a 0 passer rating. I saw it was kind of funny, but they had a picture of Charles Woodson and Peyton Manning. Both players have been in the league for 21 years now. Both players lead the league in interceptions. One good, one bad. It's as a longtime Colts fan, it really, really pains me to see Peyton playing like this.
Did I see a stat was this correct that he's had 16 interceptions in his last 4 games? Does that sound right? Wow.
Mm-hmm. It's, and the thing is, like, if they knew he's hurt, and now that it comes out that he has a plantar fascia tear, you look at the situation the Broncos are in with the division lead they have, and I know he will really want to go out there and break the record and all that. And, of course, after the fact, Kubiak says, it was obvious I shouldn't have played him. Well, then you shouldn't have played him.
We talked about this a couple weeks ago. You asked me, should they give him a couple weeks off, like you do a baseball pitcher down the stretch or whatever. I thought it was a good idea, and now we look at it, and it looks like it probably would have been a really good idea. I feel terrible that he broke the passing record on a day like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because
you almost want him to break it last week when he's in Indianapolis in a very tight game against the Colts, Like it would have been better.
Or when they beat the hell out of the Packers and he was playing well, that would have been the week to do it. But not to have it to break the record like this, it just doesn't seem right.
Yeah, he only needed like 9 yards and he got it, but he threw 25 yards.
Yeah,
today. It sucks. It really sucks to see a great quarterback go through. Like we saw it kind of with Brett Favre, but Favre wasn't injured. He was the guy that was hanging on too long. It's like, dude, you're not good anymore. Just stop. The problem with Peyton is, yeah, his skills have diminished slightly, but he's just beat up.
Yeah.
He's just not good right now. He's injured. His skills are fading, but he wants to stick out the rest of the year.
Well, when we were talking about the Broncos way back early in the season, and I kept saying I was baffled by why they were trying so hard to force the running game, now I get it. I understand it. I think Kubiak thought he knew that Peyton Manning just couldn't do Peyton Manning stuff all season again this year. But wow, I don't know. I mean, part of me thinks that he should have just hung it up after last year. I don't know what you do if you're the Broncos at this point, but they got to sit him down for a few weeks now, right?
I mean, here according to Adam Schefter, and this is what happened. If you remember, Eli Manning also had a plantar fascia tear, but Eli had a fully torn tear, whereas Peyton's is just partial, which supposedly is harder to play through.
Okay.
If it's just partial. And it's in his right foot, the one that he plants to throw the football.
Oh, boy.
So he just can't get any power behind his throws, and he's not going to be very good as long as he still has his injury. And it's an injury that takes surgery to fix. Like Albert Pujols had the same injury. And you saw for a while before he got it fixed how painful he was to watch.
Well, yeah.
So
I mean, he was throwing some real lollipops too in that game. I mean, my God, it was like I could have thrown a better pass than that. And to see Peyton Manning throwing these horrible passes, it's just wow. It's just tough to watch.
But the situation the Broncos are in, so they have a 3-game lead in the division. They're not going to lose the West unless something really tragic happens. Or one of the teams behind them really makes a run, probably the Raiders, but I don't even see that happening. Brock Osweiler is the quarterback right now, and he didn't look terrible in the game, but Brock Osweiler isn't my quarterback of the future.
No.
Like, he's a fine enough backup, but what he finished? He had 14 of 24, 146, a touchdown, and interception. He was sacked 3 times for 20 yards. The Broncos are in a tough spot. Like, you don't want Payne to play hurt, but he's still your best quarterback probably.
Well, to add to that, too, this would be a little easier for the Broncos if C.J. Anderson and Ronnie Hillman were any kind of a threat as a running game, but C.J. Anderson has just fallen off the cliff this year. Mm-hmm. He's not very good. This is I don't know what you do if you're the Broncos. I was going to bring up the Packers, that when they saw Favre starting to head downhill, they grabbed Aaron Rodgers, but let's be honest, Aaron Rodgers isn't going to be sitting there with the 25th pick every year.
Right.
That was more luck than it was good planning on the part of the Packers. I don't know how that happened. And
right.
24 teams to this day are going, what the f*** are we thinking? But,
Right. And even you look at the Colts with the transition from Manning to Luck. Manning had to sit out a year for them to get that number 1 pick. Maybe it's a situation where, the Broncos want Peyton to sit, but they also had Super Bowl aspirations before the year started.
Yeah.
They have a Super Bowl defense still. It's a really bad spot to be in when you lose, one of the best quarterbacks of all time, and now the leading passer in NFL history. It's just it's hard.
Yeah, and I don't know if there's anybody out there on the scrap heap they can grab to bring in that can kind of fill the gap in the meantime.
I mean, you look at what the Cowboys did with bringing in Matt Castle, and that hasn't exactly turned things around.
No.
It's one of those things where there aren't enough quality NFL quarterbacks. NFL caliber quarterbacks to just pick up.
No. I'm thinking off the top.
It's not even a situation where there's a backup you could trade for at this point because the deadline came and went.
Yeah, I'm thinking at this point you're looking at a guy. The guy I could think of off the top of my head is Ryan Mallett, and I don't think that's a solution to anything because he's available. But you don't want him.
Since you mentioned Ryan Mallett, the only guy with I think the only player with a worse passer rating this season. Is Ryan Mallett.
Can't say I'm surprised by that.
Yeah, I think that's the stat that I heard. So,
but yeah, the Broncos are in a tough spot. There's no doubt about it.
Definitely tough.
There is good news in the next game.
Yeah. In the next game, in the Sunday night game, the Cardinals have risen. Speaking of old quarterbacks, Carson Palmer throws for 363 and 3 TDs as the Cardinals knock off the Seahawks in Seattle. Seattle falls to 4-5. The Cardinals are running away with a 7-2 record in the NFC. 3-game lead in the division at this point. 3.5-game lead in the division.
Well, they did the hardest part of what they needed to do. They beat Seattle in Seattle. Mm-hmm. But how many times have I brought up this year that I turn off a game and because I get aggravated or it irks me and I quit watching? Yeah. Chalk up another one here. When the Seahawks scored that second touchdown on defense, I turned it off. I said I can't because I hate the Seahawks. There's no other way to put it. I thought I can't watch this. The Cardinals had these guys and that's that. So of course an hour later I find out they came back and won and I missed every damn minute of it. But oh well.
Yeah. So the Cardinals again 3-game lead in the division. The Seahawks fall to 4-5. They're in the teams that are 2 games out of a playoff spot right now, with Washington at 4-5, Tampa's 4-5, St. Louis 4-5, Seattle 4-5, Philly 4-5, Bears 4-5, Saints 4-6. They're only a game better than the Niners at 3-6.
But all the teams you just mentioned there, who do you like best? But who do you like as far as playoff chances go? The one I don't want to see is Seattle. If I'm any of the other playoff teams.
I don't think they have it this year.
I don't either, but they can certainly have moments where they can put it together for a little bit like they did against the Cardinals.
Yeah, I mean, like, the only teams I could see that could pull out of that pile would be Philly or Seattle, but Green Bay and Atlanta are both 6-3 in the wild card spots. I don't think Green Bay is going to fall out. Maybe Atlanta does, but...
Maybe this bye week will fix whatever was wrong with them and they can get it back on track. Still a lot of football to be played. We still got, 6-7 weeks left?
It's been a sorry NFL season.
It really has.
It really has. It's some of the lowest quality football I can ever remember.
I agree.
Anyway.
It's just not fun to watch. Anyway, okay.
This has been basically the football show. Follow us all over platforms, et cetera, et cetera. Watch college football this weekend and I don't know, watch the very late NFL games. Okay, anyway, for Greg, I'm Zach. This is basically the football show. Enjoy college football this weekend, everybody.
The Chiefs responded to the Vikings' score by returning to the strategy. Oh, now. Middle back of Don Dan. Oh, shoot.